الله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأن محمدا عبده ورسوله. All praise due to Allah. We seek His help and we seek His forgiveness. We seek refuge with Allah from the evils of our souls and from our bad deeds. Whomever Allah guides, no one can misguide. And whomever Allah leads astray, no one can guide. And I bear witness that there is no God but Allah and that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is His messenger. Dear brothers and sisters, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created all of us equal. The only comparison that we have in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is what we do with our actions. And this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will judge us. Unfortunately, mankind has put levels among us. We have divided ourselves into classes. We have divided ourselves into different groups. And one of the reasons we tend to do that is having the arrogance, or al-kibr, al-kibriya. You know, feeling that we are better than somebody else for multiple reasons, or for whatever reason that's out there. Now the Prophet ﷺ said, لا يدخل الجنة من كان في قلبه مثقال ذرة من كبر. That a person will not enter paradise that has some arrogance in their heart. And you know, arrogance does not fully explain the word kibr. You know, kibr or arrogance it could be one of the branches of kibr. You know, just the feeling that we are better than someone else. That we should be put on a higher level, that someone else can get us considered to have that kibriyat, to have that arrogance. And when we look at the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ and the lifestyle that he led, we can see that it was always a humble path. And sometimes we look at humbleness and we realize that, yeah, you know, we try to be humble. But sometimes it's not necessary to be humble for you not to have that arrogance. You could be humble in certain areas, but at the same time, you're arrogant in others, as we will look at examples later on. Now, one of the simplest fundamentals of having that humbleness and letting go of that arrogance is being able to accept truth and accept or being willing to receive whatever is given to you when it comes from somebody that you don't think is at the same level as you are. If you're a school teacher and a student came to you and said, this information that you gave is wrong, and they gave you the full justification for it, and you know they are right, but just because they're young, or just because they're younger than you, you did not want to accept that fact. Or if you have an employee, or if you, whatever the reason is, you rejected that fact just because you thought that you are better than them. They shouldn't have known that. And when we look at the earliest stages of arrogance and where did it start? It came with the creation of Adam alayhi salam. You know, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Adam and told Iblis, you know, with all the different angels to prostrate for him. وَإِذْ قُلْنَا لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ اسْجُدُوا لِآدَمَ فَسَجَدُوا إِلَّا إِبْلِيسَ أَبَى وَاسْتَكْبَرَ وَكَانَ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the angels to prostrate to Adam. So they all did except Iblis. And then in different verses, Iblis is telling Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you created him from clay, and you created me from fire. So Iblis is saying, I am better than him, why should I do that? So this started long time ago. So we know it exists. We know it started with Iblis when he saw the creation of Adam. So he's always going to try to embed that into our life. And we also see that this can be a way of division. Having that arrogance can divide families and can divide communities. For the simple fact that I'm not willing to accept and I'm not willing to let go of my ego because I think I'm right. Because I think that why should I let go when I know that the other person's right? And we're not talking about, difference of opinion here and you sticking to your opinion. No. We're talking about us knowing that the other person is right and that the other side know what they're talking about. But yet we refuse. We think that we are better. Just like how in Surah Al-Baqarah verses 87, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَفْكُلَّمَا جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ بِمَا لَا تَهْوَى أَنفُسُكُمْ اسْتَكْبَرْتُمْ. Every time a messenger came with whatever message they did not like, they had that arrogance. And they called some liars, they killed others. So they always rejected messengers for the simple fact that they were arrogant. They had that kibriya. They thought that they were better than those messengers. And there were so many people, so many nations that came, even with the Prophet ﷺ. They thought, well, he's not the richest of us. Well, he's not the wealthiest. Why should he be the messenger? Right? So we tend to sometimes, we might not notice this, but we tend to follow it. This could happen at work. Two people are, fighting for the same position. They want the same position, and somebody takes it over the other. I'm better than him. Haven't we thought that before? And sometimes it is true, we are more qualified than other people, but sometimes it's arrogance that's talking. It's the feeling that we are better than others. Now, let's look at what could be the cause of having that arrogance. What could cause it? What could establish that sense in a person to think that they are better than others? That they should be put on a higher level? And some people might have one, some people might have all. It might not be all at higher degrees. It could be very simple. We might not even notice that we have it. So that's why we have to look at all of them and always question our decisions. Why am I refusing something? Am I refusing it because of my ego? Or am I truly refusing it for true reasons? And the first thing comes to mind is wealth. And you see this all over the place. You see a person who lived, a normal life, who really didn't have the fanciest clothes or didn't have the fanciest anything, and then they're blessed with a nice job, or they're blessed with a lot of wealth. Then they put themselves on that pedestal. They think that I am better than everybody else. They start thinking that, why should I be associating with those people? I drive a Mercedes. They drive a 1994 Honda. I live in a $500,000 house. Or my house costs $1.25 million. And that guy lives in an apartment. He's not in my class, or she's not in my class. Now, sometimes we did have those thoughts. Even if we didn't act upon them, we questioned it. We thought about it. Now, having that bad thought or thinking about doing sin, the Prophet ﷺ said that does not count against you in a bad deed. But think about that, you're already having those thoughts. So unless you stop them, this could go farther. And then knowledge. And the knowledge can be knowledge for this life or knowledge in religion. And the knowledge in religion is very dangerous to have if not used properly with humbleness. Because the minute you receive that knowledge, you start thinking that you are better than everybody else around you. You know, I have the Quran memorized. I know all the hadith that are in Sahih Muslim and Bukhari, then I'm good. Who are you to come and question me about a certain thing? Or who are you to tell me that I did something wrong? Versus somebody having the Quran memorized and having all these ahadith memorized or understood and using it in a way where let's see how we can learn from these things. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave me those blessings, so I'm going to use them in good. Not use them to make myself feel better or to make myself look better than others. And this is similar to thinking, I mean, when you really look at this is something like, you know, somebody going up in the mountain. Or when you're in an airplane flying 30,000 feet. You know, when you look at the airplane up close, it's huge. So the people up, or that person up in the airplane looking at everybody below them, that's very small. But it's the same looking the other way around. When you have that arrogance and looking at people as inferior to you, just like how you're looking up at the people that they're below you, they're going to look up and see you small. So we have to be very careful of how we look at people. You know, just because somebody has a beard, or somebody's wearing the hijab, or somebody looks like somebody who has, you know, somebody that could be a religious figure, doesn't mean that that person is or should act as somebody who is better than anybody else who does not look like them. You know, just because somebody leads the prayers or just because somebody takes care of a masjid, we should not give them privileges. They should not have more privileges when it comes to people that come around. And then, and unfortunately, you know, you see this a lot in the Middle Eastern culture, which is tying the family connections and family names with being better than one over the other. You know, these people come from this family. So ultimately, that family is better, or that family should be considered better than others. And why do we do this? Because we see our parents did it, or we see our uncles did it. And that doesn't mean that everybody does it. You know, that doesn't mean that what we do here, or what we're talking about here, applies to everyone. But there are the few people that do it. Or we might think about it. So don't take what we're talking about today and start applying it to others in front of you. Don't look at a person in front of you and say, oh, that person has that arrogance in him because he does this. You know, that's between them and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Before we judge those who are in front of us, let's judge ourselves first. Let's see how are we acting when it comes to that element of arrogance. And then, you know, we have all these positions that are work related. Anywhere from, you know, somebody in an office position, to a business owner, to a school teacher. Sometimes the higher we get, the more arrogant we become. You know, you start as a small engineer. You know, by the time you become or you become the head of engineering, you start looking at the people below you as inferior to you. Not only that, we start looking at the janitors or the people that do what we think are lower jobs in an eye of disgust. Because, you know, I went to college and I learned I am better than that person. But what we don't understand is we were never put in the same circumstances as that person. We don't know what environment that person came from. We don't know what happened in their life to let them come to that position. And when you really sit down and think about it, you could have a janitor that can have 100% of their sustenance halal. Everything they do. But then you have an executive, you know, a CEO in a company that, you know, 10% of their income is questionable. You know, is it really halal or is it kind of, you know, falls into the river part? You know, is what they're doing okay or is it shady? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to look at these two people and see who's doing the most effort to ensure that their money is halal. And a lot of times we tend to follow our own desires. We tend to block the truth because of something that we want, something that we feel that we need. I can't have this thing until I justify the reasons for it. If I can't have it, or if I say that, yeah, this is wrong, then I won't have it. So we tend to justify. We tend to feel like, yes, this is the way to do it. You know, I need to have this nice fancy car. You know, I need to walk and dress with brand new clothes every week. I need to have brand new gym shoes every other week. And then we look at other people who maybe buy their gym shoes once a year or have them for 2 years and look at them and an eye was like, how could you be wearing these shoes? And then we look at how ourselves from the inside are better than others because of one of many reasons. You have more knowledge. You know, you were raised different. You think different. So you have, you know, your intentions from the inside, always questioning and always judging the person in front of you. You look at the person in front of you and you say, I'm better than him, I'm better than him, I'm better than her. It's okay to compare and compete. You know, you want to compete for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You want to look at a person and say, you know, well, this guy is volunteering 5 hours a week. Yeah, I want to be better than him and volunteers 10 hours. You know, that comparison is okay. But you don't look at a person and say, well, you know, that person is buying these brand new shoes. So I'm going to be better than them and buy 2 pairs. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم. Ask God to forgive me. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف خلق الله سيدنا محمد صلوات الله وسلامه عليه. Dear brothers and sisters, you know, having that arrogance, having that kibriya is very dangerous. The Prophet ﷺ said that a person who has that in their heart will not enter paradise. So there is a serious problem with having that arrogance in our heart. So to deal with it, we have to look at how can we fix this. And the first thing is we look at what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. Why am I in that position? How did I get that money? You know, how did I gain that knowledge? Wasn't it all because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it easier for me? Or helped me through it? Yeah, sure, I might have had a rough path getting there, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helped me throughout the way. And then we have the perfect example of living a humble life. The life of the Prophet ﷺ. Anything you need to compare yourself to, look at the life of the Prophet and how he lived it and things that he did. And look at the Khulafa, look at the followers of the Prophet ﷺ and see how they lived their lives. And see how we can move ourselves around to better ourselves from within. And remember the hereafter. Remember Judgment Day. Remember the beginning and our end. You know, where did we come from? How did we start? And if we think that we're so strong and so powerful that everybody else around us is weak, think of what happens when people have strokes. You know, what does a small blood clot, what does it do to a person? No matter how big that person is, it will stop them in their tracks. Or wealth, or anything. It can all be taken away in a split second. And the minute you realize that all of these things can be taken away from you in a split second, you think that, well, maybe this should not be my argument. Maybe I should be comparing myself to how good I'm going to be judged when I stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Again, this is a serious matter that we have to review. And like I said, don't take these examples and try to judge others with them. Don't look at a person and try to judge whether they have arrogance or not. Worry about ourselves. You know, worry about what we, at the end of the day, will do. How are we looking at ourselves? Are we hurting others by thinking that we are arrogant or by becoming arrogant? I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the strength to be able to look within ourselves so we can distinguish or be able to eliminate that arrogance in our hearts if we have it.